Welcome back to Touring the AFC South. I'm your host, Mike Patton. And of course, for those that don't know, I do a podcast, this podcast, and of course, I produce it as well. And I also am a freelance journalist. My guest for this episode is decided he has made it a career. He is time to change his focus. That would be Mr. John Reid after 30 plus years of being a sports writer. Mr. John Reid, welcome to the show. How you doing?
Glad to be on here, Mike. Yeah, 34 years, man. It's a long time.
Yes,
But,
sir.
when you make a decision like that, you got to make sure it's the right decision. And I've had long thoughts with my family, and actually been putting this in the works since like the end of 2018. So I have no regrets, man. Once I make a decision, I don't go back and look back and I should have did it this way or I should have did it that way. So it's out of my soul. I'll never write another newspaper story ever again.
I hear you. I hear you. Well, you leave it to us to pick up, man, and we definitely appreciate all the groundwork that you laid down. 30 plus years, 34 years, like you said, of writing. Not all of it was in Jacksonville. Everyone who's listening, there was some of that was actually of course, New Orleans as well.
Well, 24 years of it was in New Orleans. And let me say this, Mike. I wasn't one of these reporters. I mean, I went to a small college. I started in the business at a small newspaper. I think I worked at the Monroe News Star, and I think our circulation in 1987 was probably about 40,000, 45,000 circulation. And when I look back on my career, I still say those 3 years in that little small town where football was everything. It was the same town I went to school for college. I think I got more out of that 3 years experience than any other thing. We had Grambling that was about 25 miles to the west. We had Louisiana Tech, and we had, at that time, Northeast Louisiana University. And we had a sports staff of people. And I had a sports editor at that time who just say, hey, if you was serious about your craft and you wanted to learn by experience, he didn't have any problem on you going out getting stories. And I can remember like my first time I ever did an interview with Eddie Robinson, and I was nervous, and I can still recall a day that he had this chicken. It was like this chicken shack. It was a chicken restaurant, basically fried chicken restaurant. And I can remember, man, when he said, let's go to lunch. Before anything, the talking, and first time experience, never met him in my life before that day. And he just made everything feel at ease. He know I was a young reporter, and ever since that one meeting, he has always was a friend of mine until his death. And that's what this business is all about. It's about relationships. It's about friendships. Like your situation. I mean, I see you as a young up and coming, um, doing podcasts and doing freelance, and when you see talent, and you have talent, and that's what this business is all about, man. You grow. It's just like sprouting a branch in a tree, and it continue to grow. And I don't look back. Like I say, I mean, from the friendships, from coaches to good experiences, bad experiences. It was all part of that in those 34 years, man. But you know, when you get my age, I just turned 58. It's just it was just a calling that it's time to do something else to try to make an impact and try to make the same type of, you put the same type of work ethic in something else, because I want to accomplish something else in my life before I really retire.
Totally understandable. Totally understandable. And I have to say thank you again for actually taking the time to actually come on my podcast, actually being a guest, actually providing great information. Because of course I know you didn't have to do that. You didn't know me from a man on the moon, but you actually trusted in the vision that I had for the show, and just trusted in the care and the production that I had for this show. And I gotta ultimately thank you for that, because you were one of the first people that actually decided to come on my show and actually provide information and actually eyewitness account information from what you were seeing. So I can definitely appreciate that, and I wanted to thank you for that. Definitely before we kind of get on the show.
No problem, Mike. But that's what it's all about, man. Especially for young black reporters. I mean, the same hand that I can remember. My first experience. Like I went to a NABJ convention for the first time in St. Louis back in like 1992. Didn't know nobody there, but there was a reporter named Ron Thomas. And just the encouraging words, man. Hey, you in the business, give me tips on what I needed to do and those kind of things. And that's what it's all about. It's brotherhood, is helping the other man, and just that's the kind of thing that has to continue in this business, because it's a changing business.
That's correct. That's correct. Now, of course, we didn't get into it, but I gotta ask, how did you kind of get started in journalism? Where did that itch kind of come about for you?
Well, I wanted to be a sports writer from the time I was in sixth grade. I actually wrote a book report on Casey Stengel. I wrote it, and I really had a love for baseball. My father loved baseball, and I was in a house where sports was everything. And I don't know, man. I just thought that when I was like 11 year old, like any other kid, I wanted to be a football player and that kind of thing. But I just felt that, I want to get to this writing thing. I just wanted to, my father was a person who always subscribed to the newspaper. It was always thrown on our front door, and I always read the sports pages. And I had my favorite guys here in Jacksonville that I used to read. And I went from that to the sports editor of my high school paper. I went to college. I was on the sports staff at my college, and it was a love, man. It was just a love of trying to, have my own voice, so to speak, and writing was hard. I ain't gonna sit here like a lot of people say, it's a natural gift. Writing was hard for me. It really was. It was early on in my career. It was writing stories on deadline, going to the high school football game, coming back. You had to compile all your stats and all that stuff, and it took a labor of love to reach from where I started at to where I ended up at. But like I said, Mike, earlier, man, I had a lot of people who steered me in direction. I had a tough editor named Don Hudson, and he's up in at the Newsday in up there in New York. And he was blunt, man. He said, if you that's not telling me nothing, or you got too many words when you can say it in 8 and you saying it in 14. And man, it was sometimes his criticism was so harsh. It was like I go home, like I just throw my hands up in the air, like, man, like I don't know if this business is right for me. So he'd kick you a little bit too tough, but then he'd come back the next day and just, he was a friend. He's been a friend for life, and that's what it takes, man. It takes a lot of, you have to, in order to succeed in anything, you got to have some failure. And I experienced some failure early on. It was tough writing on deadline and those things. And but just the love of journalism is what steered me into it. And then just once I got into it, just trying to get better at the craft. And that's the putting in the long hours and reading what the top people wrote and seeing how they wrote it, watching something on television, a game, and then maybe reading the New York Times or LA Times and those big time newspapers and seeing how they wrote that game story and just learning how to develop my own voice and my own I always thought that writing feature stories was the hardest thing, but just going to writing stories on people and letting their story tell the story, if that makes any sense, and that's something that you have to just learn over the years. I think the hardest thing for young reporters is that they're so hard trying to break the news story, and it's so hard to try to set your mark to you want to be something that set yourself apart, but the easiest thing is to do is just try to be what you do best, and
Mm-hmm.
that's your voice. How you tell the story. Everybody can write a game story, but how's yours going to be different than 100 others?
Right,
that's
right,
that's the
right,
thing you develop over time.
right. And of course, like you mentioned, you definitely are a veteran
Mhm.
sports writer. But I gotta ask, of course, how long? What are some of your more memorable stories on the good side?
Man, there's so many memorable stories. I can go back my first year covering the NBA. I was New Orleans. We actually started covering the Charlotte Hornets that final year when they're in Charlotte before the relocation to New Orleans, and we would go up to we'll basically go cover. I think like the final month of the season, we covered them full time. I would go back and forth from New Orleans when they went on the road, but that same year they allowed me to go cover the NBA Finals, and that year that was the Lakers was playing the New Jersey Nets. First time in LA. First time, I mean, I only saw Kobe and Shaq on television and all that kind of stuff. And just, you know, going out there, meeting reporters. I can still recall just, we all lined up at the practice facility in El Segundo where the Lakers was practicing at. And then we lining up to get into the practice and was standing out there on all the reporters lined around the court, and it's like the final, I don't know, maybe about the final 15, 20 minutes of practice. And just seeing, seeing Kobe and Shaq and those guys out there, and then we go like a herd of cattle. We we go up to the podiums where they're standing and talking, and just just that made me feel like hey, these guys are not much different than what you see on television. They got a human side. They're gonna answer the questions that they want to answer. They gonna play around at practice,
Hmm.
and that was just something that made me feel like, man, they ain't no different than anybody else. They're not these superheroes that you think they are on television. But
Right.
I really feel covering the NFL 5 years and covering the NBA 15 years. Obviously my love was a little more for the NBA than it was for the NFL and the Jaguars, and just experiences. I think the toughest thing in my career was when Katrina came in New Orleans. I was I went to Austin, Texas. I was with my girlfriend at that time to evacuate because we couldn't get into one of the shelters in Houston, and we wound up being in Austin. And we were stuck in Austin for almost a month, like 3 weeks. And then when I came back, I had a meeting with my sports editor, and he said that we were still going to cover the team, but the problem was that I had like about 10 days in New Orleans before I was summoned to go to Oklahoma City to cover the team for training camp. And it's just, I still remember
Wow.
we had to drive. They wasn't gonna rent a car. They wasn't gonna rent a car for us for that amount of time because I had to be there for the first month of the season. And I just remember driving to Oklahoma City, like, man, I'm looking around, like, man, I don't know where in the world I'm at. I ain't never been in this part of the country before in my life. And it was about as different as it could possibly be from what New Orleans was. Even though New Orleans took a blow and was trying to recover and that kind of thing. But that was probably the hardest 2 years I ever had in my life. And I say it now that if I was in that situation now, obviously I got a wife and a family and all that. I don't think I would have made that sacrifice, but I did. I wanted to continue to do what I did. And man, then we had two guys on the beat, and there would be for 1 month. We had one guy in Oklahoma City for 1 month to cover the games in Oklahoma City. Then we'd have the other reporter in New Orleans, and he would be the guy that go on the road games. And then when the month switched around, I would drive back to New Orleans. He would drive to Oklahoma City, and then we did that the whole season.
Wow.
And I almost got out of the business at that time, but I was, when you're young, you see the benefits of trying to make your mark, trying to set yourself apart and that kind of thing. And I stuck with it, but that experience probably, far as a lot of times you look back on your career, like you look back on some of the things that what made you better, what made you be a better reporter, what made you improve. And during that 2 years, there was so much news going on. If the team's going to come back to New Orleans, if they're going to stay, we had an owner, George Sheehan, would tell the folks in Oklahoma City one thing, then tell the reporters in New Orleans and the people in New Orleans something else.
Mm-hmm.
And at that time, we, had basically formed a relationship with the commissioner, with David Stern, who, at that time you knew that if anything was going to happen, it was going to have to go through him. And he was like the most honest person throughout the whole situation, and never did he waver from what he said, that team is they're not going to be permanently playing in Oklahoma City.
Right. Now, now, of course, definitely was good to kind of visit, your career and come with some of the high points and the difficult points and some of the good times and the bad times.
Mm-hmm.
But of course, this is touring the AFC South, and we do have to talk about those Jacksonville Jaguars at least a little bit. So,
I'm a
of course,
fan now, so yeah.
So, of course, I want to ask, what were your feelings on the free agency spending they did? I mean, you're giving Christian Kirk that money. You're giving Zay Jones. You're bringing in Evan Ingram for 1 year and $10 million. You're bringing in Olaquan over from Atlanta Falcons, and then you get rid of Jack in the middle.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you brought in a lot of different guys. Bringing Brandon Sheriff, I got to mention him, of course.
Yeah.
Then you get your running backs back. I mean, what did you think of all that spending? Did you think they were just trying to throw up a front like they were doing something, or do you think that was a strategic moves?
Well, I thought a little bit of strategic move, but also they had to overspend. I mean, they're a franchise at that, when you look back over the previous season, 3 wins, you got a new coach coming in, and basically they were rock bottom, and they had to do something to basically change the narrative, sort of, to try to help change the narrative, which is, I think that was a big part in trying to spend the money. When you look back on that Christian Kirk deal, I mean, was it wise to spend that amount of money for a guy who never been a number one receiver? Well, time would tell on that, because basically he did set the market for wide receivers, but they needed something to say we got to bring in more talent, basically. And I don't, and you know, with a situation like the Jaguars, that there's nothing wrong with spending money in a free agency, but you got to make sure that you spend your money in the right way. I will say this: I thought that they addressed needs, and I thought they did overspend, but I thought that when they went out and try to acquire talent, they did acquire the talent in the areas that was the weak points on that football team from the previous season. But I also feel at this point you spent all that money on Christian Kirk, but I still think you got to get an outside receiver. I felt they should have drafted one, even though Christian Kirk is he can make plays, but he plays in the slot. And the Jay Jones, I was a little surprised by that because
plays in the slot too.
Yeah, for the money that they spent, I thought they could have spent probably could have got something a little more upgraded with that.
Gotcha.
But I'm impressed with their defense, though. I think they made the right moves on defense, particularly at that linebacker position. But overall, I'm not a Trent Baalke fan, and I say it on record. And time will tell. I thought that maybe they should have addressed the offensive line a little bit more in the draft than just, you bring in Brandon Sheriff and that's it. And that, time will tell if that's a mistake or not also. But
they did sign the center.
I just felt they had to make big splash moves. They didn't do it the year ago with Urban Meyer. They talked a lot. They didn't do enough. And, a guy like Evan Ingram going to help him, even though he's not this prototypical tight end, he's a guy that can get open. So, like you said, $10 million 1 year. Most teams probably wouldn't pay him that for a 1 year deal. But I think he might be one of the biggest coups that they got in free agency because I think he may have a bigger impact than Christian Kirk.
Same. I definitely think he will. Now I will say they did draft a center this year, so I think he may end up being the starter for him. So they did kind of.
He's already started, Mike. From what the report is, he's already starting at center, and they've got Tyler Shatley playing at left guard. So what?
Okay.
Luke Fortman is for 2 days. He's been working with the one, so we'll see how that goes.
I hear you there. Now, of course, with this team, there's better expectations, I should say.
Better optimism. I don't know.
Optimism. There we go. That's the word. That's the word I was looking for. I couldn't find it, and you found it for me in true writer fashion. But of course, they have Trayvon Walker and they have Josh Allen. Now, I've been on record to say that these two could potentially, and I definitely took a cue from you, John, that these two could potentially both get double figure sacks this year and become potentially one of the best outside linebacker duos in the NFL potentially. Now, the key word is potentially, y'all. So don't get too wrapped up in what I said. I said potentially. But what are your thoughts on those two as a combination?
I like it, man. I mean, they look the part. I'll say that they look physical.
That's half the battle, right?
Yeah, that's half the battle. And like I said, I went to Thomasville, Georgia 2 months ago. Came away impressed about Trayvon Walker, man. I think he's somebody that you did not see the total package when he was at Georgia. I think you're going to see the total package. Maybe not so much his rookie year. I mean, I think he's going to make plays. But when you're talking about having two anchor guys on each side, I think you can do a lot with that. And let's face it. I mean, Josh Allen has to have a consistent season. I mean, I think it's a lot more pressure on Josh Allen than it is on Trayvon Walker, even though he's the number one pick. The thing on Josh is that, man, a lot of people go back to the Buffalo game, and he had a great game. He had a great performance. And then you go every game after that, and you can barely notice him on the field. But a combination guy, they could go back to the 2017 season, when they had all those sacks, 51 sacks or whatever it was. But I like the combination, though. I think you help yourself when you got two physical guys. I think you help yourself when you can maneuver. I mean, you could do a lot of different sub packages. You could with having a guy like Trayvon Walker standing up. You could move him whatever side you can. I think he's going to be difficult to block, to be honest. And I just think he's a physical presence. I saw it during the off-season program. And, the pads come on Sunday. And we'll see a whole lot more when the pads come on. But I think the Jaguars got it right. Now, I didn't say that during draft night and all that. But from what I've seen through the off-season program, seeing what this kid background is, I think that he's going to be a player who's going to, he's going to develop into something special, I feel. And they need it. I mean, you got to have a number one pick who live up. And, he's going to be compared for the rest of his career to Aiden Hutchinson. There's no doubt about that. But I think when you look back, if he has 5 sacks and Aiden Hutchinson has 11, I don't think that's going to be the judge. There'll be a lot of chatter during the rookie season, but I think when you look at both these guys' careers, I think that Trayvon Walker is going to turn out to be the better pro. And for Jacksonville purposes, that's a good thing. But I think they got a good combination there to take some of the pressure off of Josh Allen. You're going to have to double team one or both of them. And I just think that helps. And I like the defense. Like I said, I like their front seven. I like the defensive coordinator. I like Mike Caldwell. I think he's a guy with a plan. I think he's a guy that's going to put in a whole lot of different packages. And I think finally you're going to see a Jaguar defense who makes the opposing team call a timeout because they're confused about what alignment that the defense in. I ain't seen that in 3 years.
Oh man, so, definitely something to think about. They're definitely two guys, and now my previous guest Danny Thompson was talking about potentially putting both of them on one side and kind of doing that too. So that's another option. Yeah, Now I do want to get to the tour in the AFC South inbox. Of course, we have Corey Jackson Sr. said Walker is a stud. Go Dogs. Of course, you can't tell he's a Georgia fan. But then, of course, you have Herman P. commenting from over on YouTube. Says, keep Walker away from the left-hand side of the Tennessee line. So,
well, yeah. I'm looking forward to that Tennessee game because you know what? I know you Nashville's, I'm a truth teller. The Jaguars have always tried to be that physical team. They've always tried to emulate what the Titans do, to be that physical, particularly on the defense side. And even in that 2017 season, the Jaguars just don't physically match up with the Titans. Now, maybe they got a defense this year that can physically match up. And maybe they got some linebackers who physical enough that they won't get stiff armed 20 yards down the field by that Yulee bulldozer. But I think they're obviously setting their set. They want to be that physical defensive team, and they've set in their sights. I think they've built this team around stopping the run. So can they accomplish it? We'll see. But I think they put in more pieces to get it done.
Well, here you get there. Now, as far as the Jacksonville Jaguars, I will say that as far as defensively, I have compared them to a donut more than a few times. games. Now, this is for those that aren't aware, I've said this analogy a few times. I don't know if I've said it on my own show, but I've said it that basically they're solid on the outside, but in the inside, they're either soft or nothing has been there.
Yeah.
This year, I'm not sure if I can necessarily say that, but I still withhold the donut for them right now. So I'm gonna keep that one there for right now. We're gonna see what happens. We're gonna flip over to the offense real quick. Of course, Trevor Lawrence didn't have the rookie year that he thought. Of course, he didn't have the head coach he thought he was going to have in Urban Meyer. That's another story for another day. But of course, now he has Doug Peterson stepping in, being the head coach. Do you think that Trevor Lawrence? I've got him for like 25 touchdown passes this year. Some people said I was crazy. Some people said I was like, that's too low. So, but hey, different ideas for different people. Do you think that Trevor Lawrence takes that step this year to maybe kind of give that Jacksonville offense an identity, or do you think it's somebody else with the offense that helps do that?
Well, he's got to take that next step. But as I've said in the spring, do they have the offensive line that are going to allow him to take that next step up, And I think that's what it centers around. I mean, you can't have your quarterback getting chased out the pocket. You can't have him rushing throws. I do like some of the pieces that they have that finally I think he has a season where he could actually complete check down pass. I mean, he can get the ball to the tight ends. I think they helped themselves at the tight end spot. But like I said earlier, man, I would have liked for them to go out in that wide receiver spot and get a big physical outside receiver with speed. And I don't think he has that. I think he has a good group of receivers, but I don't think he's got a breakaway guy with speed where he can get that ball downfield and take shots downfield and get it in the end zone. But I feel that he's going to have a much better season than he did a year ago. I mean, he has to. I mean everything is riding on this kid again. I don't think you'll see him complete 59% of his passes, throw 17 interceptions and that stuff. But I do feel that they got to protect him. I mean, that's essential. And then I think you got to utilize a running back like Travis Etienne. I mean, whether you run him out of the backfield, I think you got to take advantage of what he brings to the table on that offensive end. And I just feel he's got more weapons. Now, I don't think there's enough weapons for them to overtake the division or anything like that. But I think there's enough weapons on that football team where they can at least be respectable, play respectable, don't always play from behind, and just bring excitement. You can't have excitement when you average 14 points a game. So
Right.
I think you got enough talent around him this year where you can at least be in the ball game and average at least 3, like 26, 27 points a game or something like that. I think if they do that, he's taking that next jump. But I don't think you really see the real Trevor until year 3. I still think they got to add pieces. And I'm a big believer that you don't go 3-14 and make the playoffs. You don't go 1-15, 3-14, and all of a sudden you're in the playoffs. I know Doug Peterson is a step ahead of what Urban Meyer was. I think defensively they're going to be better. Offensively, I think they still got some holes on their offensive line, and I don't think they got a guy that no matter what can get open on the outside. And once they address those needs, then I think in year 3 he'll be a much better quarterback than he'll be in year 2. But he will be better than what he was his rookie season.
Will definitely be something. That will definitely be something to pay attention to and watch. Definitely this year, and of course the relationship between Peterson and Trevor Lawrence. Now, of course, we have come to the end of the show, but the end of the show doesn't mean the end of the show. That means we got a game to play. Now, I've got 5 questions for you, Mr. John Reid. Are you ready?
Yeah, I guess so. I ain't got.
All right, we're gonna do a little New Orleans and Jacksonville kind of flavor to this one.
All right.
Marcus Lattimore or Jalen Ramsey? If you got to pick one corner, who you taking?
Nah, I gotta pick Jalen Ramsey.
Yeah, he definitely does everything. I gotta say, and he
Yeah,
can play different positions too.
yeah, he's talent, man. There ain't no question about that. A lot of more talent too, but I put my money on Jalen.
There you go. There you go. Who is from Nashville, by the way?
Oh,
We do got John Henderson that was from Nashville that played for the Jaguars too.
yeah, the guy who.
Yes, guy that took a slap to the face before he played every game.
Yeah,
Don't know how he did it.
I don't know. They need to get him back.
Oh my goodness! Now I've got Duval or 504. Which one you gonna take? If you gotta take one place, Duval or 504.
Duval. Gotta go with
Okay.
that Duval.
All right. All right. Fred Taylor or Deuce McAllister?
Oh man, I'm a Fred Taylor guy.
Okay.
Now Deuce
There we
was
go.
good, but Fred, hands
All
down.
right. All right. Now this one you ought to get a little bit of a kick out of: clowns or bags over their faces. Which one would you take? Because of course Jacksonville had the clowns in the last game of the season down there versus the Colts, that the fans were dressed like clowns, and then bags over their faces is in the Saints when they were the Aints. So which one you got?
Gotta go with the original, man. Gotta go with the bags. You go with the clown movement, it didn't work, man. Trent Bulk is still back as the GM, so that was a fail for him. But the bags got national attention
Yeah,
for a
even
long
gave him the
time.
nickname the Aints. So, now of course the last one we're going straight New Orleans with. We're going a beignet or a po' boy.
Oh man. Well, that's the hardest question of them all. Then
They both good.
I tell you what, during my time in New Orleans, I think I had more I had more shrimp po' boys than I had beignets. So I go with the shrimp po' boys.
All right, all right. Yeah, I definitely had a po' boy when I was down there in New Orleans, and man, magical.
Place on Broad Street. It ain't in downtown where all the tourist spots at, but boy, I used to hit that spot a couple of times during the week for lunch, and excellent. If I ever
Man.
go back to do the NO again, I'll be back at my shop, man.
All right, all right. Now it concludes the game. That concludes the show. Mr. John Reid, again, I want to say thank you for taking a chance and believing in me and actually coming on my show and regularly coming on my show to talk about the Jaguars. I wish you well in your next career. And if you want to, tell everyone what you're working on in your next career. And if people want to contact you on social media, hey, give them that too if you like.
Well, I'll tell you this, Mike. If you in Jacksonville, I might have you come speak to my class with my students there. I'm going to be teaching 9th and 10th graders social science
Okay.
at a charter school called Horizon Institute, man. And that's my next endeavor. I want to give back. I want to be a role model to these kids. I mean, and these kids here are just, some of them at risk kids, and they need role models, in a tough area of Jacksonville, a lot of things going on in that community. And, we have to be in this mindset, man, that what we do, somebody always looking at what you do. So, that's my next journey. I want to give back. I want to help young men, young black men. I want them to have, see the future that they may not see, but help them see it, and lead them to that direction. And our youth right now, man, a lot of people don't understand, and they hard to figure out, but that's when we have to step in and try to lead them in the right way. And that's what I'm gonna try to. That's my next journey. That's where I'm gonna put my efforts in.
Well, I definitely look forward to watching that journey and everything you have going on. Again, it has been such a pleasure talking to you about Jacksonville and you giving me the 100% unadulterated truth about the Jacksonville Jaguars and how you see it in your eyes. And I greatly appreciate it. I thank everyone for tuning in. You've been tuned in to Touring the AFC South with your host, Mike Patton. We're out.